past is gone, and now I know inside this cell where to go.
Just when you think this crazy ass shit can't get any crazier, I'm going to peel back several layers of this onion. Be able to link Band of Brothers, Jack Ruby, and several other notable people to this case. What exactly happened in California that year? I have some stuff you may have never heard, and it is literally mind-blowing. Tune in. Coach Kev out. What's up, everyone? I think I figured out how to play a video finally. Jinx, Kid. Yeah, I was following the, obviously prior to this, Ruckus had Alex Voorhees on, the hacker, the modern day crime fighter, and wasn't sure what happened. If something was wrong with his internet, I think. Then it looks like he got up and running after a scene. I texted to make sure. I said, everything okay? He said, I think so. So that means, yeah, that's an old grizzled civil servant response. So tonight, obviously the big talk will be the Manson. Tom O'Neill wrote the book. If you go into my community page, I listed one interview with Joe Rogan. I'm kind of like, I like Joe Rogan a lot. I like him and Howard Stern as far as interviewers, kind of cut through the shit type stuff. Just two of the interviewers I like. That's where actually I got turned on to Tom O'Neill in the book and started the research and stuff like that. So like tonight's going to be like, I'm going to skim over a lot of stuff. It'll be a lot of revelations that unless you've dug into this, you would have never known. And there's so many times throughout this book in the process of me researching this. I started researching this like 2 or 3 years ago. So it was even prior. Jinx, Ruckus had a good live. I'm sure he did. I love Alex, and you guys know I love Ruckus. He's a good straight shooter. I'm going to watch that after this. And then tomorrow morning, Ruckus, and as I like to say, an old man o'clock, because I get up at 5:30, 6 a.m. too, no matter what. 8 a.m. tomorrow, he has Keegan Klein's cellmate, or as we say here in McKeesport, his cellie. So that's going to be interesting too. Ruckus has been knocking out of the park lately. Hopefully he comes in tonight and chats a little bit with us. So anyways, so I really got into this. This was like before I dove into true crime. I started researching like old cases. I got really into that. This was one of them. When I started finding stuff out about it and about players in this, Vince Bugliosi, Bugs, as is a better name for him. It's just mind-blowing, some of this stuff. It is just absolutely mind-blowing. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying Manson was any kind of good person. The guy was an absolute lunatic. But some things about him are misconstrued. The Beatles, Manson hated the Beatles. Okay, he was a beatnik from the 50s. If you listen to any of his music, music people say that it's really good. Like if you didn't know that a psychopath wrote this, you would be like, hey, who is this guy? But it was like folk beatnik. It wasn't the Beatles. He wasn't like a counterculture kind of person. He was the generation before that. However, he was trained and taught, as you'll see, and if you ever get into this book, by the very best people how to manipulate and control, the people that he encountered governmentally. So as we'll start diving into it. Most of you know the background on Manson for the most part. Born 1934, mom, 1935, heavy drinking mom. Imagine that. She was an oiler, as I like to say. She robbed, went to jail for armed robbery. She tries to send him to a foster home. He runs away from all these different places, always through his teen years. They said was sexually assaulted in one of these places. He committed a sexual act of assault to another boy in these things. So over the next 10 or 15 years, he escapes. He goes back and forth. At one point in 1951, he escapes the school for boys, heads west in a series of stolen cars, robbing gas stations. And they catch him in Utah. And in Utah, they catch this guy, this kid who's just, he's a mess, obviously, at this point. Beach Boys was Manson. Oh, yeah, Jinx. We'll get into that. Was Brian Wilson. Brian Wilson footed the bill for all of Manson's girls' sexually transmitted diseases, and it was a high bill, and it surprised Brian Wilson. We'll talk about Brian Wilson, though. That could be a whole episode, how that whole situation. But so they take him from Utah to the school in D.C. Anytime I hear a school in D.C., I'm curious to what that is. Is this like, I don't know. We won't get too deep into conspiracy theories, but there's a lot of validity to a lot of that stuff. So he goes to the school, is supposed to, teach him this and that. He sees a shrink. He starts seeing a shrink. And this isn't the 50s. This isn't like a common thing like today. Some people saw shrinks, but like, you kind of had a crazy level to see one. So he says he's a cunning, sly kid, but he's also a very sensitive kid, very, hurt feelings, stuff like that. He goes on and forth. Now in the 50s, he marries a Rosalie Willis, a waitress from Wheeling, West Virginia. They have a kid, Charles Jr. Charles Jr. kind of stays out of the spotlight. He had a couple interviews and things that he did. Hey, there's Ruckus. Interviews and a couple things that he did. Dave. Hold on, Ruckus. Dave, you can shoot your shots at me. Take advantage of it, because Michigan sucked this year in basketball. They're not going to make the tournament. Get Dave over here. So I got my Chris Webber jersey hanging, but all the Penn State people around here are freaking out. Penn State basketball. So level your shots now. Rick Snake, level your shots at me for being a Michigan fan too. But football season will be around the corner, and we'll talk then. Yeah, Ruckus, I was following. I wasn't sure what happened. Then I saw that you came up later. I was getting ready for this, but I'm definitely going to go back and watch it. I love Alex. I think he's very interesting. I also talked about your tomorrow Keegan Klein cellmate interview, or Selly. You get your shots in now, Dave. You and Rick can get your shots in. Michigan stunk it up this year. I got no defense. None. And again, I'm going to give you names and stuff like that. And if you're into this, you could deep dive every person in every situation in this list. There's probably 20 people in this book I can't even mention tonight. I don't want to go on for hours. I want to keep it. Hey, Ruckus, go blue. Hey, I like it. They're not exactly the Sox, but at least you have a baseball team in your hometown. I have what's called the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's another podcast altogether. Manson, as a kid, imagine he's divorced. So in 1959, he's arrested for forging a treasury check. He's given a 10-year suspended sentence. So at this point, he's under some kind of wing or some kind of guidance. That's what O'Neill alleges in his book. And to me, that it's there. And you go back and you talk to other people about it, and other people that were around. Charlie's mom, yeah. Actually, I think she was 15 exactly. Kid, yeah. Dave's talking about the Manson music. Yeah, it's bizarre. Now, what I played in that video was the girls singing like it's kind of like, it's for effect of, obviously, it's kind of like a spooky, these girls were insane. Some of them were taking advantage, whatever the case, and they were singing. But at the time, a lot of the people that were into music thought he was on to something, but they thought maybe he was just a little bit late with his folk type stuff. Because again, with the Beatles, Helter Skelter. Helter Skelter, as I'm going to show you, the Vince Bugliosi book is absolute and total nonsense. Almost all of it is total bullshit. And that's what shocked me. But everyone, that was the book that everyone based everything on. So anyways, with Manson, but that 10-year treasury thing, O'Neill talks about that. He talks to a judge about it, an old judge who wasn't on a case. He's like, that's a big charge. That's a federal thing. So he's now under federal parole, under a guy named Roger Smith. Okay, Roger Smith. There's another guy you can write down and you can look up. So I'll side to Roger Smith real quick. Roger Smith was part of a program with the parole agents. They were going to various level of guys, so or girls or prisoners. So this guy had 200 and this guy had 50. So if this guy could serve this 50 really so much better than the guy could serve the 200, they were going to hire more parole agents, and they were going to probation parole agents. Actually, this was parole. These are people that were in prison. And if they could change their lives with a smaller caseload, that was what they were going to do. Roger Smith started with 40. He ended with one. He had one. Charles Manson, one. So that's very odd, very suspicious on its own merit without anything else coming back to it. January, he married again, and then he steals another car. He's ordered back to prison that had been suspended in 1959. He's transferred to a federal penitentiary again, a federal penitentiary. He claims to be a Scientologist. This is in 1961. I mean, this guy was a lunatic ahead of the other lunatics. I don't want to offend anyone if you're into Scientology, but he was like championing this shit before Tom Cruise ever jumped on Oprah's couch, long before that. Had a second child. And there's all these people too. They're saying there was a kid later on. I don't know about it, really into any of that stuff. 1966, wants to be a songwriter. See, it says in 1964, becomes obsessed with the Beatles and learns to play a steel guitar. But from everything I researched, that he was learning that guitar on homemade devices and different things like that for quite a long time. So again, Manson said he hated the Beatles because he wasn't into that revolution thing. There was no Helter Skelter. I mean, think about it. If he pounded Helter Skelter into these kids' heads so hard, would they have misspelled it at the murder? Would they have spelled it Heal? No. So that was all, again, that was Bugs Bugliosi selling books. And I don't even know if he concocted the story himself, to be honest with you, to be totally honest with you. March 21st, 1967, Manson asked prison officials to let him remain in prison, but having completed a 10-year prison term, he's released and he heads for San Francisco. He doesn't just head for San Francisco. There's a letter from Roger Smith that says, hey, you're here in LA. Why don't you head to Haight-Ashbury? It literally, it says like the vibe. He mentions the vibe in the letter. You can find this letter. I'm not sure if a picture of it is in Tom's book or not. The vibe, go pick up the vibe at Haight-Ashbury. It would really behoove you to do that. So the parole guy's sending him there. A lot of other people would leave. They would have to go to that LA office. And this guy's like, no, man, you could go there. Now, some people said Manson went at first, and then the guy wrote the letter saying to cover it up. I don't know exactly, but for sure Manson went, and this guy wrote a letter and said, hey, Charlie, go to Haight-Ashbury. So we get to Haight-Ashbury. Okay. It's your 1967. He kind of shows up. He's at the Haight, and it's beginning to build to that summer of love. The hippies are getting there. 1968, a number of followers called the family move into Spawn Ranch. And that's what they were called. They were never called the Manson family. They didn't call themselves that. George Spawn didn't call them that. Local people didn't. They just called them the family. So they would go through dumpster diving. They would take food out of grocery store containers in dumpsters in the back. They would have food for so long, they would have to throw it away. So they would find this food and they would dumpster dive and they would, make these feasts. They overwhelmed Brian Wilson one time that when they got into his house, and I'll explain how they met and got there. When they got into his house, they cooked this giant dinner of I forget, different meats and vegetables and potatoes. And there was some kind of cake they made, like a strawberry cake. And Brian Wilson ate this dinner and he's, man, that was fantastic. You girls are wonderful cooks. And Charlie's like, we got all this food from the garbage in town. We went in various supermarkets. He couldn't believe it. And instead of being grossed out, Brian Wilson may or may not have been under the influence of something at that time. He was like, this is incredible. This was free food and you made it this good. So that kind of endeared the family to him. But again, they were never called the Manson family until at least after the arrest. It could be before trial, but at least after the arrest. So you have that there. So now Manson's in the Haight. He's out of prison. And even though he's out of prison, there's no stigma. It's kind of free love. He's a little bit older than all these people. So he's able to kind of manipulate. He's had some psychological training through psychiatrists. And he was a very smart, cunning man. He probably wouldn't win any spelling bees or anything like that, but he knew how to manipulate and control people because he was manipulating and controlled his whole life by the system, by, just everything. I mean, he was a product of his environment. I don't think Charles Manson was born, even to a mother in a situation he was in, was born to become what he became, as notorious as he became, even though he probably wasn't that notorious. Ed Kemper, famous serial killer, and it's a true story according to all accounts. In the show Mindhunter, when they go to meet Manson, they don't Manson. Oh, I don't. He's being temperamental. Make him wait. I don't want to see him yet. So they go see Kemper, and then Kemper's kind of pissed, like, you're here to see Manson? I'm here. You want to talk to me? And as they're leaving it, he says, try not to stare at Charlie. He's really, really little. And Ed Kemper's 6'8", but Manson was like 5'2" or 5'3". He was a tiny individual, but he was charismatic, very charismatic. So whether he got these people to kill for him, or whether he just got these women to have sex with him and these guys to steal for him and do whatever, he was very charismatic, and he was able to take care of what he wanted, not what anyone else wanted. He failed more times than he tried. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, there's no question about that. And in a couple other people, as we start getting into people that were tied into this, it was in my teaser video that I made, and how they're all tied into it. And there's varying, you ready? There's varying tentacles in the Manson. I think on YouTube, I'm not a big drinker. I prefer my medicinal marijuana. I will have a glass of wine with my girlfriend, or some seltzers, because I'm celiac, so I can't drink beer. But I think anytime anyone in true crime says tentacles, everyone in the audience should drink. How about that, huh? Tentacles. Okay, but this thing has more tentacles than 150 octopuses, and it's insane. Like, you can't make it up, right? So this is in the book. Again, for those that came in, chaos. I'm going to read it one more time. And what I do with books, I like to send them to people. If anybody wants this, give me maybe 2 weeks, depending how busy I am. I do want to read it one more time. And it's like 700 pages. There's a lot. His notes are great. Everything's in it. That's 600, whatever it is. But I don't believe in having books on the shelf. I have some in there. I like to give them away because I read them all. I don't want to wow anybody with my book reading skills. So if anybody wants it, if not, you can pick it up. It's like $20-$25 paperback. It's a fantastic book. And again, check out my community page, and I'll post more interviews. Concrete did a good one. I'll talk about all that. I want to get sidetracked. I'm already 17 minutes in. Okay. So he appears at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic. He starts seeing a psychologist named Jolly West. Jolly West was part of MK Ultra. He was the head psychiatrist during the MK Ultra experimentation on people. Jolly West was involved in a San Francisco operation where they would have prostitutes come in. They had this brothel set up with two-way glass. They would spike the John's drinks with acid, and they would watch them have sex with these prostitutes and watch the changes and everything else there are. Pam, what's up? Are there pictures? Which pictures, Ruckus? I have a lot of pictures. I can send you or post up some of them. There's some pictures, if you're talking about the book, there's some pictures in the book, but I have a bunch of other ones. And over the years, people, this 1969 is having kind of like, it's kind of out of there. So there's a couple podcasts. Yeah, there's a few pictures in the book of a couple of different people, a couple of different things. It's not really that in depth. There's a picture of Reeve Whitson, who I'm going to talk to. Looking through a bunch of pictures of O'Neill. Reeve Whitson's an interesting person. A lot of his notes. Let's see. Charles Manson. Yeah, the letter is in here. If it's the if you're talking about from the probation, Albert Wall, Chief U.S. Probation Officer. I could take a picture of this. You're not gonna be able to read that. I mean, I could barely read it here. But yeah, so that's in there, June 3rd, 1968. Immediately after receiving this letter, you'll report to either U.S. Probation Office, U.S. Courthouse, Los Angeles, in person, or to undersign to San Francisco. Failure to result. From this point on, you are not. Okay, so this letter here is actually the one that's sent to him from them. Give this matter your immediate. Any permission given by Mr. Smith, who is no longer connected with the service, is hereby canceled. So yeah, you have to read through this because it does reference Smith. So Smith had told him he can leave, and then he said he couldn't. So I don't know if this was like a cover your ass letter. A stern letter to Manson from Federal Probation Office. Manson often ignored his responsibilities as a federal parolee, but he never faced any consequences. So the Ruckus, I'll send you the book here if you give me a couple of weeks to read it. It's a very interesting book. And O'Neill. So let's talk about how O'Neill actually got into this. What made him get into this? So in 1999, Tom O'Neill actually got in. He was writing for a. I have the name here. Let me find it. It was a magazine. It was like a local magazine. It wasn't Parade. I'll come across it. I have it in my notes. My notes aren't very good today. Usually they're better. So he's doing a 30-year anniversary, a retrospective of the murders. What are people talking about? And now it's just 1999. He started this in 1999. He published this book in 2019. For 20 years, this took over his life. This consumed him because all the shit he was finding. He went from one to the next, to the next, to the next. Some people would talk, some wouldn't. He talked to so many people. He's the one that got the Tex Watson tapes freed from that attorney in Texas after he died. And the deal was with the Los Angeles police, they were going to release him to the Los Angeles police. And the detective that was in charge at the time said, hey, you could come listen to these tapes. Once LAPD got the tapes, they ghosted Tom O'Neill. And he was never able to listen to the Tex Watson tapes. There was like 4 to 6 hours of tapes that he wanted to put on tape with this attorney. And the thought process and the theory is that everything that really happened was on it. So I don't doubt that Tex Watson killed anybody. We're not there. I'm not saying any of that. But exactly what had happened and what was said was there. And why the LAPD wouldn't want to release them, I don't know. It's maybe they think that, hey, this is over with. We don't want to open new scabs or whatever the case may be. But it's just another bizarre thing that you can add to the other 150 bizarre things about this. So Jolly West psychiatrist, Manson started seeing Jolly West. Manson called acid zuzus. Okay. Some people said that's what he called candy, zuzus. He would go see Jolly West to get his zuzus. So either Manson came out of Jolly West's office with a brown paper bag full of penny candy, or he came out of the office of the head psychiatrist that was in charge of MK Ultra with acid to give to his people. Now, this is what O'Neill's saying. I thoroughly believe this. There is no proof that we'll ever, I don't think, be able to have. And Jolly West has passed, and I think most of the stuff that was released after his death was already, they're not going to release anything else. But yeah, that's the running theory, that they were actually giving this guy dosing, here, give this to these people, do this and do that. Why would they do all this, right? It sounds insane. This is the CIA. Okay, we'll get to that. So Jolly West also killed an elephant. What was his name? Tusco? I think his name was Tusco. Yeah, I don't have the name. I think it was an elephant. But if you look up Jolly West elephant, so he gave this elephant so much acid, he killed it. And it was a mistake. Oh, blah, blah, blah. There's another story about an airman at a base that was supposedly, Tom talks about this in the book, that it attacked and killed a little girl and didn't know who he was or anything like that. So it's, you got to judge that for yourself. But that's why I want to read this book again. And like I said, Ruckus, if you want, I'll send it to you in about 2 weeks. But I want to read it. There's so much in it. But my hope for you from this thing is if you have any interest in this, you take off. Oh, I'm going to go this angle. I'm going to take this angle. Because there's so much. I mean, you could spend your life researching this. Tom spent 20 years. Kill the elephant. So he hooks up with David Smith. David Smith runs the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic. No relation to Roger Smith, the probation officer. Let's put Roger Smith on the shelf right now. This is David Smith. Starts the free clinic at the Haight-Ashbury. Manson would go see Jolly West and do his psychological thing. And you know what? Maybe we should bring the other Smith back in, Roger, because he had an office in there. Well, he only had one client, was Charles Manson, right? So if Manson's going to get his zuzus from Jolly and his girls are getting treated for STDs around the corner at the free Haight-Ashbury Clinic, and who knows what else they're doing. So this was all tied in. The social experiment is what this was. This was all tied in together. So what's the reason for it? Was there a good reason? Were they just screwing with people? Or were they trying to learn something? It's hard to say. They were probably attempting to learn something. Roger Smith, the parole agent, had his almost like a pre-behavioral analysis training before it was called that in the 50s. It was called something else, something to do with crime. It wasn't theory. I don't know. I forget what it was called before then. Hey, Frank, what's up? Tusco, kid. Tusco is his name. Kid, you must be on this book already. But Tusco. Okay. So again, these are just a couple people that we're linking up. And I could do a show or 2 shows on each of these people, especially Jolly West. Okay. Jolly West later on met with Jack Ruby. And this is documented. So Jack Ruby went into the meeting with Jolly West. Jolly West was going to say, hey, I'm going to decide if Jack Ruby's crazy or he's just a patriot and wanted to kill Lee Harvey Oswald. After several hours of meeting with Jolly West, he crawled underneath the table and was screaming that Jewish children were being slaughtered outside of the window. That's a quote. That's verbatim what he said. So Jolly West walks out the room, and I was like, man, it looks like he's crazy, doesn't it? So what happened? I don't know. You can never prove Jolly West dosed him with acid. You can never prove anything like that. But that happened. That happened. That isn't one of the things in the book that Tom talks about. It could have went this way. That happened. So I don't know. Did Jolly West? What did he do? I don't know. He did something. Why did he want to keep Jack Ruby quiet? I mean, God, you want to talk about a podcast episode? There's a series, a 6-year series. You're going to talk about Kennedy. We're not going to get into that today. That's just the Jack Ruby. That's the Jack Ruby link. So let's talk about Band of Brothers, right? Buck Compton. Lynn Buck Compton, Band of Brothers, was played by, I always call him the fake Ray Liotta. He's a younger actor. Buck Compton was in the 101st, and he was an incredible soldier, got hurt, just took a beating over there, came back, was a policeman in Los Angeles, left the police force and worked for the district attorney's office. So Buck Compton, or Lynn Buck Compton, they call him more Lynn that time. I think Buck was a war name, and usually people named Buck are no joke. They don't get that name because they're punks. So Buck Compton was kicking people's ass and taking names. He prosecuted Sirhan, which maybe is another episode we could talk about, but he prosecuted him too. So he was the chief deputy district attorney at the time that Vince Bugliosi was assigned to this case. Now, I'm not saying that he assigned Vince Bugliosi to this case, but those two guys clearly knew each other, worked in the same office, and things like that. So that's just another tentacle. I couldn't find a picture of them two together. I'm sure they have to be out there. But it's just another weird thing. Like, how did this dude end up in this somehow? Well, there's more. Angela Lansbury, right? Angela Lansbury, Murder, She Wrote, all that. Her daughter was actually in the family for a while. And she said she caught wind of the drugs. Whatever happened. This was before the murders. And that's when they moved and went to Ireland. Her and her husband moved to Ireland. And there was 2 kids. The daughter was obviously heavily wrapped up into the Manson family. And she credits, not long before she died a few years ago, she credited that move with saving her kid's life, she thought. And got her away from that situation. We know Tex Watson, the football star, the enforcer for Manson. Tex Watson was also a drug dealer. Tex Watson brought a lot of heat on the family. One of the people he ripped off was a drug dealer named Bernard Crowe. Bernard Crowe was in the city. Tex took some marijuana from him. Marijuana, like I'm talking about him 70 years old. He took some weed from him and didn't pay for it and just kind of said, yeah, screw you. And he left his girlfriend for collateral at the apartment, never even came back for her. So Bernard Crowe gets pissed off. So he somehow gets the number out for the Spawn Ranch. There's a phone. Manson at one point gets on the phone, tries to reason with the guy. Manson's scared. He doesn't know what to do. So he goes and he shoots Bernard Crowe. He tried to kill him. So if everyone says Manson never killed anyone, that's really not true. He tried to kill Bernard Crowe, and that whole thing spiraled out of control. Don't know exactly what happened after that. O'Neill suggests some things, but that's up in the air. So there was a murder that happened with Manson for sure, was Donald Shorty Shea. Donald Shorty Shea was a ranch hand that worked at Spawn Ranch. They lived at Spawn Ranch. If you didn't know, it was an old movie ranch. And the old man, George Spawn, would live there. George Spawn was taken care of on a daily basis by Lynette Squeaky Fromm, the one who tried to kill President Ford. Tentacles. Yeah, in case you didn't know, one of Charles Manson's followers in 1975 tried to shoot President Ford. President Ford from the University of Michigan. Why would anyone try to do that? But yeah, so it's insane. So that's another little thing there. Bobby Boussier, brother Bobby, he was the guy that actually was arrested for killing Gary Hinman, the music teacher. Gary Hinman, the music teacher, was basically the bridge between Manson and Brian Wilson. For the most part, he kind of did like an introductor to them. And after that, Manson was like, we have to figure out how to get in. And he got in with women and drugs. And once he showed that to Wilson, Wilson was like, oh, yeah, come on in. You know, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, Leslie Van Houten, these people, Clem Grogan, these were the family, the base of the family. There was Mother Mary, who had the first kid with Charles Manson. She actually, her and another girl, I don't know if it was Squeaky or not, went and they drugged some kids. This is in up north in Big Sur, California. So they're up there and they drug some kids, and they're trying to recruit male members for the family. And they drug them, and these kids freak out. Well, one of them is actually related to the police chief, one of his son. So they arrest these girls. So they're going to take the daughter. Hey, we're going to take the kid. Manson's parole agent, Roger Smith, and his wife agree to take custody of Mary's, which is Charlie's kid, I think, Mother Mary's kid, and this is his parole agent. And they let it happen, so she doesn't lose the kid. And and in a couple, like, they're in jail for like a week or two, and then the charges are kind of scaled back, and someone pays some kind of fine, and they get out of there. But they drugged the police chief's son with acid, and he freaked out. So, stuff's hard to make up. Clem Grogan, Dennis Wilson. So how did they meet Dennis Wilson? Well, Dennis Wilson, like I said, Gary Hinman, the music teacher, they kind of ran in the same circles. Once Charlie kind of knew about Dennis and realized, hey, this guy's cool, he's going to let us hang out, he kind of set his girls into motion. They kind of took him off his feet 2 or 3 at a time. Next thing you know, Manson and the family's living there. And Dennis Wilson actually moved out of the house and had a realtor come put a for sale sign up and sent people there to evict him. He couldn't even do it because they just wouldn't listen to him. They tried to find him later. I don't know if he hid out for a while, but his brothers were actually over there and for some kind of party. And he's like, you got to hear this guy perform. So Manson performed, and the Beach Boys were like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something there. And then he started talking, and the rest of the Beach Boys were like, dude, what are you nuts? You have to get away from this part. This guy's insane. So it kind of went through there. Yeah, they broke in. They did several things, but they lived there. They basically squatted there, and Wilson had to have somebody come and kick them out. He was like, I'm selling the house. You have to leave. Terry Melcher. There's a couple of things with Terry Melcher. Terry Melcher was a music mogul. He worked with the Byrds and a couple other big bands at the time. Terry Melcher's mother was Doris Day, the actress. So Terry Melcher gets hooked up with Manson through Brian Wilson. And at first, Melcher's a little interested in his music. I guess he thinks his music's good. Then he probably has a conversation with Charlie and realizes that this guy is crazy as the day is long. So we can't have him as a musician. They go back and forth. There's Tom says in the book that Terry goes out there and spends a couple days out there being romanced with the girls, provided all the drugs he wants. That was Charlie's thing. Here's 3 women, whoever you want, take them, go back in there, do what you want. What do you want? Cocaine, speed, weed, acid. Like, we got it all here. So whatever you want, you got. We'll cook you some dumpster cake in the morning for breakfast, and everybody, move on. Hi, Jamie. You know what, kid? Everything I hear is the weed back then compared to the weed now is absolutely nothing. Like, the weed now is so much stronger. That's what they say. But these guys were taking all kind of other shit too. They just weren't out there smoking weed. Listen, there's never been a cult of people that have smoked marijuana and went out and tried to kill anybody other than a bag of Doritos. It doesn't happen. Give everybody weed. My brother, when he was a cop here in town, said, I wish I could just give everyone weed every Friday and nobody would do shit to each other. Everyone would just be like, I was pissed at that guy, but I don't remember why. Yeah, the music scene was actually really insane. There was all kind of shit going on. Manson was one thing that was happening, but there was so much. You're right at that time. The country was really shifting there too, quite a bit. It would have probably been a really cool time to be alive and to be that age. Not just be alive, but to be 17, 15, 18, 19 years old, and that would have been really cool. I'm sure I'd have been in there. Hey, everybody. I wouldn't have been able to grow hair, but I'd have been one of the bald hippies. Everyone probably would have thought I was a cop or something, but I would have to show them, here, I'm not a cop. If a cop wouldn't do this or that. So whatever. Yeah, kid, it wasn't smoke. And you know what else too? And eventually, I'll get into tonight, the Haight-Ashbury, it went away from marijuana and it went to more speed. And when it went to speed and cocaine, that's when these dudes started acting like nuts, because that's what that does to you. It speeds you up, makes you act goofy. So you give all these hippies speed and cocaine, they went from, hey, peace, man, to like, burning around and everything like that. So Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son, doesn't make a deal with Manson. And here's the thing that throws out the window that the Mansons went to Cielo Drive, 10050 Cielo Drive. Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski were renting that house. They said they went there to kill Terry Melcher. Well, that's absolutely untrue, and this is the reason why. Because about a week or 10 days before, Charles Manson actually went to Terry Melcher's new apartment because he knew where he lived, and he left a bullet there. A bullet. An unspent bullet. Heard of that before? He leaves it there as a message to Melcher. Don't screw with me. You told me you were going to give me a deal, and that was all it was. And everybody corroborated this later. Melcher's housekeeper found it. Like, everybody figured this happened later. So about 10 days to 2 weeks later, the Cielo Drive murders happened. And Sharon Tate, Wojtek Frykowski, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger were brutally murdered. I mean, one of the worst crime scenes ever. I wouldn't share any pictures. If you really want to see them, they're out there. Sharon Tate was pregnant. Sharon Tate was pregnant with Jay Sebring's kid, not Roman Polanski's kid. That's another big misconception. Her and Jay Sebring were back together for all intents and purposes. Jay Sebring was the first celebrity hairdresser. So he was like a guy that was a hairdresser. He wasn't like the barber, shave, he would style your hair. And at that time, you could get your hair styled because it was like the late 60s. If you were in the 50s talking about, I'm a guy, I'm going to get my hair styled, it might have been tough for you in the 50s to say that. But here's the 60s. Jay Sebring was also the cocaine dealer to the stars. And you would come get a haircut and an 8-ball for the weekend. It was a one-stop shop. And it was 67, 68, 69. Who can do whatever, but that's what happened. So I truly believe, and we'll never know this, but I truly believe, and so does Tom, that she was pregnant with Jay Sebring's kid, not Roman Polanski's kid. Roman Polanski at the time of the murders was filming Day of the Dolphin in England. See you, Ruckus. I'm going to check out your thing. If you didn't watch the Alex Voorhees live, go watch it. And then tomorrow at 8 a.m., he will be with Keegan Klein's Sully. So I definitely will want to check that out. So anyways, all this stuff's happening peripherally, right? Roman's out of town. These people are here. So what happens? What's the theory? Tom puts a couple of different theories out to why the murders actually happened. Was it a drug situation? Were people going up there to get drugs throughout the night? Someone robbed them. Well, one of the theories and one of the things that are presented is that Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas was there after the murders, but before the police. She allegedly tells people this a few weeks before she dies in England, and she's having like hard time. Obviously she was very emotional, fantastic singer. There you go, Jefferson Airplane, fantastic singer. Just supposedly saw this and left and didn't know what to do. Steve McQueen was supposed to be there partying with them this night. Steve McQueen said this. He ended up hooking up with 2 girls at a bar and he says, well, I'm going to go with these 2 girls instead of going up there for a party, whatever was happening up there. Okay. There's other theories that there was drugs all over the place and it was cleaned up by the police department because this would shed a light on Hollywood. Oh, these Hollywood drug people, blah, blah, blah. So none of that could be proven or disproven. And I don't even know if they tested these people for drugs. Some say they did, but where are the medical reports? I haven't been able to see anything like that. Who actually did the killing? I believe that the people that we think and know that did the killing did the killing. There's theories that other people came in and did things, but I think that's what it was. Stephen Parent, he was the kid in the car that was visiting the guy in the house, the little house, like the gatekeeper or the groundskeeper house. That guy didn't hear anything. There's just so many crazy things. Now, they lived in Benedict. This was Benedict Canyon. So it was like, if you ever look on the Google Maps, that's always a good thing to do. If you can't go to a place, look on Google Maps for any kind of crime scene you're investigating and try to look and see how does this set up? There's nothing like going to the place and seeing it, I'm sure. But so there's a canyon. So even though that road might be 4 miles away, as the bird flies, it's only a mile. There was people that reported hearing gunshots at 3:30 in the morning when this supposedly all happened around midnight, 1 o'clock. Could these people have been tied up and been tortured and been, hey, where's the drugs? Where's this or where's that? Absolutely. Tom puts a lot of that in the book, and you can easily see that if that happened, okay, this makes sense. Let's enter Reeve Whitson. Reeve Whitson, not the golfer. Reeve Whitson worked for the CIA. Reeve Whitson worked with Art Linkletter on the safety cap for prescription pills and medications to keep for kids. A race car enthusiast. He was a CIA spook for a lot of years. I mean, he knew a lot that was going on. He has said later in life he could have stopped the murders at Cielo Drive. So he somehow inserted himself into the hippie scene for some reason. Enter Operation Chaos and enter Operation COINTELPRO. Both things were pushed by the CIA, one of them, and one of them by the FBI, to overthrow the hippie movement. These are declassified documents. The hippies were gaining momentum. We want to free. We don't want war. And I'm not saying the hippies were always right or anything like that. But what I'm saying to you is these government agencies wanted to overthrow what was happening. So they put out this information. These are the same people that attacked the Black Panthers and other social organizations, any kind, black, white, Polish, Irish. If you were making progress, they were worried about you. We all knew to J. Edgar Hoover. He thought public enemy number one was Martin Luther King. That's why he wrote him out letters, said you got to kill yourself, or I'm going to tell everyone you got this girl pregnant. So all this shit was going on behind the scenes. The theory is that they forced this thought process on Manson. They created this cult leader to send these kids out to do murder so they could point and say, look at those hippies. Look at those hippies. Those hippies are dangerous. And overnight, it did happen overnight, whether they wanted it to or not. And I wasn't there, obviously, but from everyone I talked to, from all the newspapers, overnight, like the United States turned against the hippies. And now that hippie down the street was just, oh, that dirty hippie, what's he doing? Now you're like, oh, is he going to come kill me in the middle of the night? So that was the response to this, whether it was done intentionally by the CIA or the FBI. You read the book, you redo your own research, but there's a lot there that says that maybe some of this is true. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's all I can tell you. I have no vested interest in the book. I never met Tom O'Neill. I'd love to. He talks in an interview on the Concrete podcast about partying with Marilyn Manson. And they partied early into the morning. So I'll let you draw your conclusions on what was the drug of choice at that party. But it's interesting. And the guy is super interesting. Okay. Again, O'Neill is Premier Magazine, 1999. Tom O'Neill accepts that. It's a 3-month article. Hey, about 3 months, you get this in. We're going to do 30-year retrospective of the murders, which happened in August. So this is 3 months before August. So you're June, maybe the end of May. Hey, you got 3 months, get this together. And it turned into a 20-year book. And he talks about that in the book. His meticulous notes are in the book. His sources are in the book. So the book is almost like a dictionary for this shit. Like you can go in there and say, oh, look this up. Boom. So whenever you guys read anything, this is my opinion. Whenever you guys read anything that you want to read, don't just take for granted what's in that book. Because there's times where I went through this book and I'm like, nah, there's no way that's true. And then I looked it up and I'm like, holy shit, it's true. But anytime you question anything, verify sources on it, So theories for the murders, more of them. One of the things proposed, and Manson might even have said this itself, but Manson didn't always tell the truth, Charlie. He would lie quite a bit. That they killed the people at both of those places and wrote what they wrote on the wall to try to frame Bernard Crowe, who he shot for Tex Watson, ripping him off for weed, and he killed 2 birds with 1 stone. And it freed Bobby Beausoleil, because Bobby Beausoleil, they killed Gary Hinman. Manson was there for that. He cut off Gary Hinman's ear with a sword. They went there for money, and Gary Hinman didn't have any money. He's like, I really don't have any. Bobby Beausoleil ends up killing him after Manson leaves, supposedly under Manson's orders. Now, Beausoleil, they went back and forth on whether he ordered it or not, but I think Manson's there and he's cutting the guy's ear off. I mean, maybe he didn't tell you to kill him, but he's not telling you to keep him okay. I appreciate that, Jinx. Yeah, Hendrix. Not a lot about Mama Cash. Yeah, fantastic music. Yesterday at work, my deputy chief plays guitar in a band, and we watch it real quick. If you ever like Leonard Skinner, it's called If I Leave Here Tomorrow. It's currently on Netflix. It's from 2019. Fantastic, fantastic documentary on how they made their music, the swamp, the little shack there. It's fantastic. Yeah, he loved it. So, but so this again, I just wanted to like skim this, all these little things, and maybe poke your interest in it, and maybe you could start doing research if it interests you. But like on this channel, I don't want to be, obviously we got our bread and butter. Floor is always going to be my bread and butter because what I do for a living. I think I'm happy to carry that case as much as I can with a whole lot of other creators that do a whole lot of good work on it. Ruckus is into it, Meow's into it, Frost is into it, Snake. There's so many people that are covering it. It's awesome. And I see, just all kind of different people. And, I've seen people go back and forth with creators and other things like that. Man, I'm not here for that. If people don't like each other, I don't even think they should bring it up on their streams. Just stick to the case. Hopefully everyone likes what I put out. And if they do, great. If they don't, we'll agree to disagree. But I think everyone just keeps their head to the grindstone to take cases like Flora. I don't think Delphi would have fell without all the pressure. Whatever's happening there, right? Like Carmine Lupertazzi Jr. says, whatever happened there. I don't know what's happening there. I think Rick Allen's the guy on the bridge. I think there's other people involved. Flora. There's bullshit going on. I think I know what it is, but I'm not 100% sure. But I could tell you the aftermath, 100% for sure, that there's someone covering someone's ass. Okay, 100%. What I cannot tell you as a 21-year fireman is what caused that fire. If I've never seen pictures of the inside of the building, I've never seen the pictures, the V's, the alligator. I do this for a living. I'm not a fire investigator, but I've seen, I don't even know, maybe 300 or 400 fires in my 20 years. I don't even know if it's a high number or not. But I cannot say this is what started that fire. Once the fire started, I could explain to you all the fire behavior. We could talk tactics. Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? But the aftermath is obviously the cause of the fire. And listen, I'm at the point, whether it was arson or whether it was electrical, either of those two, there's crime. That's a crime. Because if it was electrical, they knew the electric was bad. And if it was arson, obviously that says enough. But it's hard I can't make 100% determination about what caused that fire right now. Until I can see pictures of the inside. I just can't do it. I can tell you that there is 110% some bullshit going on in the aftermath, in the reports. And again, why doesn't Carroll County list their information on the Department of Homeland Security website? How does everyone else have to do that, but they don't? I need to understand that. I need to hear from people. There has to be somebody in that fire department or the police department that sat on this shit for too long. And they're probably really good people, and they probably tried their best that night. And they have to eat the shit that these people are shoving down their throats to protect whomever. Come to me, man. I've seen it. I've been there. I know what it feels like. And just give us something on that. For them girls in Galen, give us something. Anything you got. To all the creators that talk about Flora, keep it up. Keep the pressure up. Keep the pressure up. Keep the pressure up. Whatever case you're into, if you don't think Rick Allen's the guy, then keep the pressure on them to get the right guy. We would disagree on that, but that's okay. We can disagree. I love enthusiasm, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of enthusiasm. And there's a lot of people that I don't agree with a lot of what they say theoretically or technically, but I love their enthusiasm. So I still go to their shows, and I like their shows. A guy like Ruckus is a guy like that. We could disagree on certain things. He disagrees with people all the time. And I love when he's like, oh, well, here's the number. Call in. I'd like to do that too. Not to put anyone on a spot, but maybe you could win me over. I'm not here to argue with anybody, here to get shit done, hopefully. So I hope you all liked tonight's episode. Again, there's some things on my community page. I'll share more. The guy's name's Tom O'Neill. The book's Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. I'm going to read this one more time. And like I said, it's about 600 pages. Depending on how busy I am, I don't know if Ruckus wants it first, I'll send it to him. But it's not an expensive book. It's on Audible or whatever if you want to listen to it. I don't know who they have voicing it over. But check it out. And if you're into this thing, it's a crazy rabbit hole. Rabbit holes are attractive to me. I don't know why, because I want to solve the puzzle. I want to figure it out. This one we'll never know 100%, in my opinion, what happened. We'll never know unless those Tex Watson tapes get released. And even then, how much do I believe Tex Watson? So anyways, I hope you enjoyed tonight. I hope that it piqued your interest in this a little bit. Manson was an absolute lunatic madman. Vince Bugliosi was an absolute lunatic madman. And there's things I wanted to talk about Vince Bugliosi that I didn't get to tonight. I'm not going to say them now because we need to talk for like 20 minutes about it. But you do your research on him. Look up, paternity cases and domestic issues and a lot of stuff like that involving him. So maybe at some point we'll jump back into this again. I'd like to do more. If anybody has questions here, I'll do my best to answer them. If not, the next day or the next so often. But I am going to go check out Ruckus and Alex Voorhees. Remember, he's back tomorrow at 8. And again, just follow the Flora creators. There's a whole lot of them out there. Go to YouTube and type in Flora. And there's a whole lot of people with a lot of passion about Flora and wants justice for the girls. And in the end, if that's in your heart, we could disagree on what happened or why it happened. But in the end, if that's what's in your heart, I'm cool with it. One of my best friends at work, he doesn't have YouTube, so he's not watching. He probably would be considered having a head of rocks. He only hurts himself, no one else. But he got a heart of gold. And if you got a big heart, that's enough for me, I think. So everybody, I hope you had a good Sunday night. NCAA tournament. Get ready for it next week. Place your bets now. And hopefully some of you got into this a little bit and want to research it and check it out. And I'll be back. I will do something again this week. We'll probably be more floor related. Maybe have a guy on that I work with, maybe a deputy chief. If not next week coming up, we'll watch a little bit of that video. And I really don't see the need to watch that whole video again on YouTube Live, knowing what we know now. No, I discovered that on Ruckus's show, and I watched it 50 times. I didn't see what I saw until then. And I don't think we need to watch that anymore. But there's some things that we could talk about, leading up to that. And I think you guys know what I'm talking about. But keep sharing the floor stuff, guys. I'm telling you, we're close. We're so close. People out there that are sending me information, all I could say is have faith. Have faith. We're getting there. Everything might not always make sense, but I'm telling you. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming in. Have a good Sunday night. I'm going to finish out here. I hope you enjoyed the Manson Rabbit Hole episode number 1. Coach Kev.